terrible acts of anti-Semitism, and absolutely compelling evidence, examples that should be closely followed by the Royal Commission and chased down. But to suggest that somebody on a university campus wearing a keffiyeh was evidence of anti-Semitism, or somebody doing a bake sale or demonstrating or having a Palestinian flag, to conflate those as anti-Semitism, those false conflations of anti-Semitism is one of the reasons why the Muslim community is being attacked at the moment. How would those allegations of anti-Semitism without substance allowed to be unchallenged? Is this what we would expect to see going forward?
I think you're getting into the substance of the way the Commission is conducting its inquiry. Hearing Block 1 heard from, as I said, a number of individuals who have experienced anti-Semitism, and we heard accounts of their stories. In the second week of Hearing Block 1, we also heard from a number of organisations and institutions that went to issues around the definition of anti-Semitism, where some of those issues around precisely how would you define anti-Semitism, taking into account the overall context, was heard.
Well, false claims of anti-Semitism, wrongly conflating criticism of the actions of the State of Israel or basic acts of Palestinian solidarity, wrongly conflating them with anti-Semitism, is part of what drives Islamophobia and attacks against the Muslim community and attacks against the Palestinian community. But they were left unchallenged in the Royal Commission itself, when you're meant to be talking about social cohesion and fighting radicalisation. Left totally unchallenged by the Royal Commission. And now you tell us that you won't allow the Muslim community to come in and give evidence about their experience like this. How is this a balanced Royal Commission?
Senator Shoebridge.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for your attendance today, Ms. Shen, and your team. The Royal Commission's terms of reference expressly extend to recommendations that would strengthen social cohesion and countering the spread of ideologically and religiously motivated extremism in Australia. To what extent is the Royal Commission considering anti-Muslim hatred and religious and ideologically motivated extremism, radicalisation and de-radicalisation and radicalisation that's targeting the Muslim community?
Thanks, Senator. The Commission will hold hearings to look at all of its terms of reference. So future hearing blocks will be looking at of issues of ideologically and religiously motivated extremism and de-radicalisation. So that the precise detail of what's included in those hearing blocks is still being worked through.
Well, is that going to look at right-wing extremism and hard-right ideological attacks against the Muslim community? Are you going to have express extension of your hearings to include what we've seen repeatedly, this hard-right ideological attack against the Muslim community?
The focus of the letters patent, the terms of reference, is on anti-Semitism, and so that is the key focus of the Royal Commission.
But the terms of reference expressly say and empower the Royal Commission to make any other recommendations that would contribute to strengthening social cohesion in Australia and countering the spread of ideologically and religiously motivated extremism in Australia, separate to the other express and detailed references on anti-Semitism. So am I to understand from this exchange that you're not intending to have hearings looking at that anti-Muslim hatred, that Islamophobia that appears to be so prevalent in parts of our community at the moment? That won't be a separate hearing block.
Senator, I think you're referring to term of reference D, which refers to make any other recommendations arising out of your inquiry into the matters set out in paragraphs A through to C. So that reference to strengthening social cohesion in Australia is through the lens of the primary terms of reference into anti-Semitism.
So it's the view of the Royal Commission that, notwithstanding the broad reference there to ideologically and religiously motivated extremism, that you're only looking at that to the extent that it targets one religion.
the terms of reference explicitly refer to the term of reference D being linked to the other terms of reference A to C. Mm-hmm. This was something also the Commissioner touched on in her opening statement in our opening hearing on the 24th of February. And she referenced essentially what I'm saying now as well, which I can find that reference.
If it's on the public record, I can find it myself, Ms. Chair.
Yeah. It's towards the end of the Commissioner's opening statement at that opening hearing, where she says, she expects that social cohesion will be advanced by measures that address discrimination against religious faith, ethnicities and cultures generally. Nonetheless, against the background of the massacre of innocent people who appear to have been targeted simply because they were Jewish, I trust everyone will appreciate why the focus of the Commission will be on tackling anti-Semitism as a starting point in strengthening our bonds of social cohesion.
Well, yes, as a starting point, now having seen multiple submissions from the Muslim community, from NGOs, pointing out the link between false claims of anti-Semitism directed against members of the Muslim community and others, and the attacks on the Muslim community, has that led the Commission to consider having hearings about the attacks on the Muslim community?
I think it's fair to say that the Commission's inquiry will be focused on anti-Semitism, and there may be recommendations that go to term of reference D around social cohesion more broadly that are linked to what the inquiry has found through its consideration of anti-Semitism.
Well, in hearing block 1, there were dozens of witnesses who characterised basic Palestinian advocacy, things like bake sales, wearing a keffiyeh, showing the Palestinian flag, calling for boycott, divestment and sanctions, characterised those actions of Palestinian solidarity, falsely characterised them as anti-Semitic. They were not challenged in any way by counsel assisting. How was that allowed to happen? Falsely stating that simply somebody wearing a keffiyeh was somehow anti-Semitic and yet not challenged by counsel assisting. How did that happen?
The main purpose of hearing block 1, there were a variety of witnesses that appeared during that hearing block, but was to hear from Jewish Australians on their lived experience of anti-Semitism, and it was an opportunity for them to share their stories of issues that they had faced. Some
of what the evidence was appalling, terrible acts of anti-Semitism, and absolutely compelling evidence, examples that should be closely followed by the Royal Commission and chased down. But to suggest that somebody on a university campus wearing a keffiyeh was evidence of anti-Semitism, or somebody doing a bake sale or demonstrating or having a Palestinian flag, to conflate those as anti-Semitism, those false conflations of anti-Semitism is one of the reasons why the Muslim community is being attacked at the moment. How are those allegations of anti-Semitism without substance allowed to be unchallenged? Is this what we would expect to see going forward?
I think you're getting into the substance of the way the Commission is conducting its inquiry. Hearing block 1 heard from, as I said, a number of individuals who have experienced anti-Semitism, and we heard accounts of their stories. In the second week of hearing block 1, we also heard from a number of organisations and institutions that went to issues around the definition of anti-Semitism, where some of those issues around precisely how would you define anti-Semitism, taking into account the overall context, was heard.
Well, false claims of anti-Semitism, wrongly conflating criticism of the actions of the State of Israel or basic acts of Palestinian solidarity, wrongly conflating them with anti-Semitism is part of what drives Islamophobia and attacks against the Muslim community and attacks against the Palestinian community. But they were left unchallenged in the Royal Commission itself when you're meant to be talking about social cohesion and fighting radicalisation. Left totally unchallenged by the Royal Commission. And now you tell us that you won't allow the Muslim community to come in and give evidence about their experience like this. How is this a balanced Royal Commission?
The Royal Commission has to operate with the terms of reference that it has set out in the letters patent, and the focus in those letters patent is on anti-Semitism.
Well, any matter reasonably incidental to a matter referred to in paragraphs A to D. What we're discussing now is obviously reasonably incidental, and yet is it going to be unexplored by the Royal Commission? Is that what your evidence is?
My evidence is that the focus of the Royal Commission, as set out in the letters patent, is on anti-Semitism.
Could I ask about secrecy law changes? Commissioner Bell raised very real concerns about witnesses from security agencies being unable to give frank evidence due to Commonwealth secrecy provisions. There's now been some law reform in the space, providing immunity to only a handful of those secrecy provisions. Does the Commission consider the protections in that recent law reform, which I think was called Protections for Providing Information Act, does the Commission consider those protections sufficient to allow all current and former agency members to give full and frank evidence?
The Commission was very supportive of those amendments being made. I think they addressed the key barrier that we were aware of in terms of secrecy provisions, posing a barrier to both agencies providing information to the Royal Commission, but also individuals. And with those,
are they sufficient?
We have not experienced problems with individuals being able to put information forward to the Commission.
Well, the bill requires relevant agency heads to voluntarily enter into arrangements with the Commission before their current or former staff are protected. Have all relevant agency heads entered into such an arrangement?
Yes, there's 2 arrangements in place and they're both on the Royal Commission's website.
Do they cover all the agencies the Royal Commission needs covered?
Yes.
Have any witnesses declined to give evidence or given qualified or limited evidence because they are uncertain about whether they had protection?
No, we only held 1 hearing block so far, so the witnesses that were relevant to hearing block 1 would not have been relevant, but if you're... So maybe witnesses is not the right...
Well, perhaps when I say witnesses, I mean anyone who is not just being called formally as a witness, but anyone who's seeking to give evidence or provide a submission. Have any of them indicated that they didn't feel comfortable to give full and frank evidence in either a submission or otherwise because of the lack of adequate protections from potential prosecutions for secrecy breaches?
We haven't had that concern raised with us.
Can I ask about the situation on security clearances? The Royal Commission Legal Assistance Service, do any of the solicitors or the support staff on that have security clearances?
The legal advice scheme and the legal financial assistance scheme that's set up for the Royal Commission is administered by the department. Secretary, do the solicitors and others providing advice on the Royal Commission Legal Assistance Service, do they have security clearance? Somebody has indicated to my office that they have confirmation in writing that they do not. Do you know what the situation is?
So, Senator, the scheme that was established, we entered into an arrangement with National Legal Aid, I believe, and it is National Legal Aid that provide the legal assistance from people who apply under that program. I need to take it on notice, the specifics about whether or not they have security clearances. The officers who could assist with that have gone.
It's been asserted to my office that the relevant service has indicated solicitors do not hold a security clearance. If that is the case, Secretary, how can they give legal advice to people coming forward to the Royal Commission, given the subject matter of the Royal Commission would obviously regularly involve intelligence agency conduct, security operations, classified material? How can a witness get proper legal advice, disclose that matter to a lawyer if the lawyer doesn't have security clearance?
Senator, I'd like to take that on notice. Some witnesses obviously would be eligible under Appendix E assistance and be assisted by the Commonwealth arrangements. If they're not within that scope, then they could be receiving assistance through the legal assistance scheme that's been established and that the Legal Aid Commission is assisting with. So I'd like to take it on notice.
When you say Appendix E, is that a separate form of legal assistance where the lawyers have security clearance? Is that what you're referencing? I'm not familiar with Appendix E.
Not necessarily, but
Mr Ing might be able to assist with this.
Senator, it's Appendix E under the Legal Services Directions. It's now Part 9 under the Legal Services Directions 2025. What it provides for is that relevant former or current Commonwealth officials can apply for assistance from their accountable authority in relation to legal proceedings writ large that involve them in relation to in the course of their official duties.
So does that mean somebody who is currently or formerly with ASIO can apply to ASIO for legal assistance? Someone formerly or current with the AFP can apply to the AFP? Is that how that works?
So there's the relevant decision maker will depend on the seniority of the person within the agency, but in general, if they are an employee or a former employee of the agency, the accountable authority is the person who decides. There are provisions around where that is not appropriate, but that's the general rule.
Well, so Ms. Young,
Yes. And sorry,
does that language mean? Does it mean what I understood it to mean? That if you were or are a current or former employee of ASIO, that the relevant authority for the purposes of, did you say Appendix E of the...
Sorry, it's Part 9 of the Legal Services Direction, Senator, but I should have clarified that there's only one scheme that is available, and actually the legal assistance scheme that has been described more generally would also be available.
But this was all about, my questions are all about security clearances. I understand that the solicitors for the Royal Commission Legal Assistance Service, which has been run out of legal aid, do not have security clearance. And therefore, how can somebody who's coming to the Royal Commission and wants to give evidence about matters that involve intelligence agency conduct, security operations, classified material, if their solicitor doesn't have security clearance with the Royal Commission Legal Assistance Services, where do they go?
So, Senator, we haven't had that issue raised with us. I mean, we can take on notice or you could direct that person to us and we can work through how we can assist them.
Well, as a general rule, people like to maintain their, particularly if they're whistleblowers, they don't much like being forwarded to the government when they raise concerns with members of parliament in circumstances like this. People, it doesn't seem an unreasonable expectation that somebody at this table, either from the Royal Commission or from the department, can identify how somebody who's a current or former member of a security agency can get a lawyer to help them give evidence to the Royal Commission and ensure that that lawyer has security clearances so that they can actually get the advice they need. It doesn't seem unreasonable to ask this question, given the Royal Commission has been operating for many months now. And it seems odd that no one can answer it. Nobody at the table can answer it?
Ms Gigi is going to assist.
So I think if the issue arose, the individual could go to the Royal Commission and then we could assist the Royal Commission with advice on a security cleared lawyer.
Has anyone approached the Royal Commission indicating their concerns that the proffered assistance under the Royal Commission Legal Assistance Service only includes solicitors that don't have security clearance? Has anyone raised these concerns?
There are some individuals that we're engaging with as to how they can provide information to the Royal Commission under the auspices of the information arrangements that I mentioned before, so how they would be able to provide classified information to the Royal Commission in a means that's consistent with those information arrangements. And we're working through those issues. It's not so much about what legal advice they may wish to
Where do they
have.
go for legal advice? You can't refer them to the service because they haven't got security clearance. Where are you referring these people to for legal advice?
So we don't... There are legal advice schemes in place, but the Royal Commission does not provide legal advice to the individual.
I'm not saying you do, but you must surely somewhere on your website, and I think I've seen it before, have reference to legal advice. You're referring people who need legal advice to the place they can go. Where do you refer people who need legal advice about evidence that is subject to secrecy provisions?
On our website, we refer individuals to the two legal service providers that have been set up.
Senator Shoebridge.
So, can I just finish with this? Secretary, can you provide on notice where on earth somebody would go to get a solicitor who's got the right security clearance so as they can be assisted to give evidence to the Royal Commission if it's subject to statutory secrecy provisions?
So happy to take that on notice, and Senator, I would always also suggest that if you wanted to suggest to the person who has approached you for them to at least contact the Commission, and then the Commission can work with us to ensure that we will seek to make arrangements for a security cleared lawyer.
They've already approached the legal service and got told that they haven't got security clearance and can't help.
If they approach the Royal Commission, we'll work with the Royal Commission.
Thank you, Senator Shoebridge.